Welcome back to Mossy Bottom on this very beautiful July day. I am sat here at my newly created rustic table with birds singing and insects buzzing all around me. It feels like a good day to be lazy, so I'm going to sit here and talk to you for a while. So, since first publishing a video a year ago, I've received quite a lot of emails and comments asking about the logistics of moving to Ireland. How much did the cottage cost? How did you go about finding it? Is it difficult to move there? Were there any legal issues moving from the UK, etc.? So I thought it was about time I attempted to answer some of those questions in a video, and that's what this video is going to be all about. In the hope, I suppose, that it might be beneficial for any of you out there considering a similar move to the one which I made. And just to kind of reiterate for anyone who hasn't seen my other videos, back in 2016, I took my entire life savings and bought a ruined old cottage here in the west of Ireland with about an acre of land. And I'm in the process of slowly restoring and turning that into a self-sufficient smallholding, with, of course, plenty of help from volunteers, and Moss the dog, who's back there somewhere lazing in the sun, and of course my ever-growing family of animals too. So a few weeks ago I received an email from a chap called Chris from the UK, and he asks a lot of the most commonly asked questions that I get in comments and emails. So what I'm going to do is go through that mail, pull out his questions and do my very best to answer them, in the hope that everyone may benefit. So let's take a look. I've got my laptop here, and question 1 reads, you said in one video, rundown cottages are a dime a dozen. I have about £50,000 to spend on both purchasing and renovation. I don't care where it is, remote-wise, but it needs to be pretty. Will this be adequate, or is it a pipe dream, and should I pick up extra shifts for another year? So ruined or rundown cottages were certainly very common when I was looking for property here in Ireland. That was 3 years ago. And I can't speak for how things are now because I don't actively look, but I suspect it's still very similar, because driving around you will still see very many small 1-storey, 3-room cottages, as the majority of Irish people just don't want to live in them anymore. I suppose they're considered too small, too damp, too poorly insulated. In touristy areas, particularly along the coast, many of them are being snapped up and converted into holiday homes. But you know, I'm about 50 minutes drive inland from the coast, and I can honestly say that in this region, they're very, very common, and you'll frequently see them as you're driving around, abandoned or for sale. In terms of costs, my total budget was not dissimilar to yours, but that enabled me to purchase the cottage and land. It certainly isn't enough in and of itself to complete the restoration. And of course, that's partly why the restoration is taking time for me, because I'm simply not in a position to pay builders and contractors to come and do the work for me. But in my case, that really suits me because I enjoy learning new skills, and I'm comfortable living in a caravan and sort of slowly digging out the life and future that I want. That lifestyle suits me. And I think the amount of money you need very much depends on the type of life that you expect to live, and particularly how long you want to wait before you have a livable, modernized home. If you're prepared to kind of rough it for a while, living in a temporary home while you do the work, or you pay other people to do the work, and you have the ability to keep earning money while you're here, then I think £50,000 sounds like quite a lot of money, really. If you want to buy and restore a cottage quickly, contracting out a lot of the bigger jobs, potentially like a new roof, groundworks, insulation, windows, possibly even digging a well and installing a septic tank, which are huge jobs and very expensive, then you probably need to budget many tens of thousands more on top of the purchase cost. So I'm sorry if I can't give you a straight yes or no answer to that question, but it really is so subjective and dependent on the type of property you end up buying, the lifestyle you want and how quickly you want to achieve that lifestyle, how much work you're willing to do yourself, and whether or not you're willing to kind of rough it for a period of time. So, question 2. If one is doable, what would be the county to head for? Now, I'll be honest, my preference in regard to counties at the time of looking for somewhere was County Kerry. Being in the south of Ireland, it's probably a touch warmer, and you kind of have all that drama of the mountains with breathtaking white sand beaches, and even a few ancient forests in there. There's some lovely oak forests down in Kerry. It's also the county that I knew best, having spent a lot of time visiting Kerry when I was living in Cork City. The further north you go, the more kind of rugged and wild the landscape seems to be. But I can honestly say, thinking about it now, that Connemara is no less beautiful than Kerry. It's probably even more dramatic. And Donegal up north has a sort of savage beauty, which I've grown to love as well on visits. I'd say if you're looking to grow your own food, think very, very carefully about the location. Because if you're right on the coast, it'll be windswept and with those strong Atlantic winds making it very, very hard to grow crops. So you're going to need to invest significantly in windbreaks just to have a chance at cultivating vegetables or fruit trees. The more east you go, the more inland, the easier it is to grow things. And if you want to be self-sufficient, that's a big consideration. In terms of price, Middle Island seems to be the cheapest, although I was looking right up the west coast and indeed viewed properties all the way from Kerry to Donegal. The sort of Roscommon, Sligo, Mayo, Leitrim region seems to have abundant cottages that are reasonably priced, where the most bargains are to be had. But honestly, I wouldn't rule out anywhere if you're looking for cottages in Ireland. My preference in terms of east versus west is the west because it's most dramatic and mountainous. But beyond that, you know, search everywhere, see what you can find. So question 3, is purchasing property difficult? I was thinking that maybe I should actually look around physically, as maybe bargains could be found that way. I use Rightmove, which for those of you who don't know is a property website in the UK, to look daily. And once I sell my house and have the equity, I need to take the plunge and was wondering what the first step should be. Well, first of all, if you're looking for property in Ireland, forget Rightmove. You want to use daft.ie, daft.ie. And I have no affiliation with them whatsoever. They just have the biggest listing of properties in Ireland. And what I used to do when I was searching was I would filter by price. So I'd have the cheapest first for the whole of Ireland. And I would then spend hours painstakingly going through each property, considering location, the amount of land that came with it, the condition of the property, all those different factors and variables. And I then kind of made a short list of about 10 or 11 properties, which I then spent a week driving around up and down the west coast viewing. Often on my own, I should add, as the auctioneers refused to make an appearance on many occasions because they didn't want to sully their newly pressed suits. So the first step, in my view, is to find properties that you like. And you can do that on the internet from the comfort of your own home. Make a list of pros and cons for each, and then schedule a week or two to come over and view them. That would be a great opportunity to see what's available and to get a taste for the environment as well, to become familiar with the country and the people and the atmosphere and see if you like it. One thing to add on that subject, though, is that I viewed properties in February, which is certainly one of the coldest, wettest months of the year. and it was in February 2016, so it was after a very, very wet winter. So I kind of knew that in terms of viewing this place, it wasn't going to look much worse than it did right then. If you do your viewings in July or August, as it is now, be aware that the Emerald Isle looks considerably more sparkly in those summer months. But saying that, Ireland is definitely well worth a visit in the summer, as you know, the journey up the wild Atlantic Way along the west coast will just take your breath away at this time of year. So it's worth visiting now if you get the chance. Question 4. Is it difficult to hire a solicitor? And are there any legal concerns moving to Ireland from the UK? In regard to hiring a solicitor, I simply searched online for the nearest 5 or so and rang them, asking for quotes. And I went with the best value quote from the solicitor that was in the nearest town to the property I wanted to buy. And I remember the first thing every solicitor asking me when I rang them was where the property was located. That seemed to be important and to influence the quote that they were giving me. So for the benefit of local knowledge, if they need to visit the site, I definitely think it's important to find a solicitor that's local. But the process is really simple. Just go on Google and do some searches. In terms of legal concerns, as a British citizen, I suppose currently the biggest concern is Brexit. But right now, you can buy property, you can live, you can work, you can pay taxes in Ireland just like an Irish citizen can. And I've indeed done all of those things over the past however many years. So I don't think that's going to change post-Brexit, but like everyone else, I don't really know for sure at this point. Brexit has definitely got to be a concern right now if you're coming from the UK. If you live anywhere else in the EU, then you can freely move to Ireland and live here just as if it's your home country. If you're coming from America or Canada or Australia or anywhere else in the world, then things get a bit complicated. You need to get a visa, and I don't know anything about that process, I'm afraid. So you need to do lots of research independently if that's the case. I think the biggest legal concern with buying property, and particularly this type of property, has got to be access. These old cottages, they can be on old lanes. You know, make sure that you have the right of way on that lane, which connects the cottage to the road. It's often the case that it's owned privately, and even though there appears to be, it appears like a normal main road, it may just be some private agreement between neighbours that exists from hundreds of years ago that isn't bound in law. So you need to double check that. In fact, your solicitor, once you've hired them, should do all that for you. And if there's any concerns, they should bring them to your attention. And finally, question 5. Are there any tips you would think might help that I haven't mentioned? Tips. So I suppose my number 1 tip has got to be to consider what your life will be like 5 or 10 years after you've moved here. I think if you're making a move as big as this from one country to another, it should be for lifestyle, not for buying a property. So work out what your source of fulfillment is and make choices around that to create that lifestyle. I think that's the most important tip I could give. Another tip, I suppose, is to be brave. I think most perceived obstacles can be overcome if you confront them head on and don't stop until you find solutions. I certainly tried to do that, and an example being the lack of mains water connection here at Mossy Bottom, which I think would put a lot of people off. But you know, I was able to find solutions to that which work really well and have done for 3 years now. It's a little convoluted, a little complex maybe, but you know, if you're making a move like this, you've got to be willing to compromise. So try not to be too inflexible. Another tip, I suppose, would be if you're considering buying somewhere that's quite remote, then make sure you enjoy a degree of isolation. And I've mentioned this in other videos previously, how it doesn't really affect me, but that's not to say it wouldn't affect everyone. I mean, you're probably going to have internet, there's good 3G phone coverage here, and you'll have neighbours who I'm sure will want to know every detail of your life, but it still feels fundamentally different to living in a city or a suburb. And if you're not used to that, you might want to kind of have a trial period first, kind of familiarise yourself with it and see if you enjoy that extra isolation and separation from people. I think finally my tip, once you move here, get a dog. It's probably the best thing that I've ever done in my life, and you know, occasionally on hot sunny days like this, they might even fall asleep and give you a bit of a rest. Okay, that's just about it for this video. I do, however, have several more planned for the rest of the summer, so keep checking the channel for future updates. And as always, a huge thank you to everyone for watching, commenting and contributing. I do read all the comments and emails and messages that I receive. I'm not always able to reply to them, but I definitely read them, so thanks a million for getting in touch if you have. And if anyone has any suggestions for future videos of this type, answering questions, then feel free to post them in the comments. And if you enjoy this type of video that's kind of less focused on action and a bit more just me sitting down and talking, then let me know too, because sometimes I'm not too sure about the type of content I should be making. Other than the fact that I know you all want to see the cottage, which is definitely coming soon. Anyway, that really is it for this video. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.